I picked up the death note and looked at the Shinigami beside me, who was tempting me to kill. Do you have a printing press? Handwriting just can't keep up. It's impossible to finish. The Shinigami froze for a moment and said helplessly, don't you have any morals? If you kill so many people, your parents will cry. My parents died a long time ago. It paused, then asked, then you must have other relatives, right? Yes. My parents' inheritance compensation was taken by them. Death was taken aback and changed the angle. Didn't your teacher teach you not to hurt others? I was bullied at school, and he told me to endure it, saying it was all my fault. It stared at the pen in my hand and said helplessly, you have hands and feet, can't you work to earn money? I worked from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the factory, but the agency tipped my wages. Death glanced around and said, at least you have a place to live. This is me breaking in by picking the lock. The previous tenant just died from overwork last week from working 996. The Grim Reaper fell silent at that. After finishing my last bit of stored food, I picked up the notebook I had found and prepared to write my suicide note. A skeleton dressed in a black robe suddenly appeared before my eyes. The skeleton's eyes glowed with an eerie light, its voice creaking like a rusty iron door. Human, this is the death note. Think of someone's face in your mind, write down their name. And they will die exactly as you write. Would you like to try it? I stared at the Shinigami, blinking my eyes in confusion. I can't help but wonder, I probably haven't starved to death yet. If I were to die just like that, it would be such a waste. I just spent the last $10 in my phone to buy a knife, and I was planning to stab the agent to death tomorrow, seeing that I hadn't responded for a while. Death probably thought I was scared, so he leaned in closer and tempted, don't worry. It won't be discovered, write it down, and the person you hate will die. He waited for me to show a hesitant or excited expression, but I just nodded calmly. I picked up the notebook and started writing furiously. I didn't even hear clearly what the Grim Reaper was saying beside me. It wasn't until I had filled 10 pages with dense writing, the pen ran out of ink, and my hand was unusually sore. Only then did I look up at the stunned Grim Reaper and ask sincerely, do you have a more high-tech method, like getting a printing press? I can't finish writing, I simply can't finish, my hand is almost sore to death. Death suddenly halted, even forgetting to sway the hem of his black robe. What did you say? I said. Can I get a machine, something more efficient? Otherwise, when am I ever going to finish them all off? Aren't you going to pick someone to try first, just starting to write like this? As he spoke, the Grim Reaper drifted over and glanced at the contents of my notebook again, drowned after being pushed into a manure pit and struggling for 10 minutes, died from pain after having his penis crushed by a large truck, died from being loved to death by 10 muscular men from Chengdu, mistaken for a duck by a mentally ill person and turned into Peking roast duck. The words death had prepared seemed to get stuck in his throat, and after a long pause, he only managed to squeeze out, do you feel no psychological burden at all from killing? I replied somewhat speechlessly. Wasn't it you who gave me the notebook and told me to kill? The black robe of death rustled softly, as if encountering a human who didn't follow the script for the first time. Have you never thought about handing it over to the state? That's what the previous owner of the notebook did. I rolled my eyes and retorted helplessly, will the country help me kill my enemies? I want them all to pay the price, I want them all to die. Seeing that he didn't respond, I added, if you don't have any tools, do you have human money? I only have 2 coins left in my pocket, and I need them for the bus. The Grim Reaper fell completely silent, crouching there with his black robe pooling on the floor, beginning to question his existence. The previous owner of the notebook was a good person, so when she got the notebook, she immediately planned to hand it over to the state. And the Grim Reaper found it too boring, so he killed her. Now a god of death has arrived, too. The god of death was speechless, pointing at the notebook. He asked curiously, you've killed so many people, if your parents knew, they would be heartbroken. My parents died long ago. They died at a construction site when I was 4 years old, 2 lives exchanged for 800,000. The Grim Reaper paused for a moment before asking, then you must have other relatives, right? I nodded and let out a cold laugh. Yes, my parents' inheritance and compensation money were taken by them. They said they were keeping it safe for me until I came of age, but then they turned around and bought a new car. They even took over the house, and the land was all divided up. If it weren't for them, I could have at least gone to an orphanage and probably lived a better life than I do now. And because I was a girl, when I was 14, they even tried to sell me for money. They claimed it was a good marriage arrangement they found for me. Death was momentarily speechless, then changed the angle. At least you went to school, right? Isn't there a 9-year compulsory education system now? Didn't the teacher ever teach you not to hurt others? I glared at the Grim Reaper. He really knew how to hit a sore spot. I did go to school, but I was bullied. They called me a wild child with no parents. I had no choice but to tell the teacher. but he just told me to endure it and said it was all my fault. Otherwise, why would they bully only me? Then they became even more unrestrained, and I was bullied even worse. In the end, I dropped out of school. The Grim Reaper stared at the pen in my hand and said helplessly, "Isn't society developing quite well now? Finding a job and staying alive shouldn't be that hard, right? You have hands and feet, can't you work to earn money?" Hearing the Grim Reaper say this, I chuckled twice. I'm underage and have no education, so I can't find a good job. Originally, a boss took me in, but then someone reported it out of kindness. He had no choice but to fire me. Later, I worked at a black factory from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, but the wages were taken by the agent. I took out the small knife I had just bought and handed it to the Grim Reaper. "Look, this is the knife I just bought. I plan to stab that damn agent to death tomorrow." The Grim Reaper didn't give up and took one last look around the rental room, even though it was smaller than a prison cell, although the toilet is right next to the bed, and although I can't stand up straight, at least I have a place to live. He pointed around. "At least you have a place to stay." I picked up the used pen and threw it hard at its head, saying angrily, "I broke in by picking the lock. The previous tenant just died from overwork last week from working 996, didn't you? The Grim Reaper, come to take him." The Grim Reaper fell silent at that. 3. Since my pen ran out of ink, I could only stare wide-eyed at the Grim Reaper. Wait, it doesn't have eyes. It should be a case of big eyes staring at a skull's hollow sockets. After a half-minute standoff, the Grim Reaper couldn't hold back any longer. Floating over, he pointed at the notebook and asked curiously, "How do you remember so many names?" I smiled and pulled out a thick diary from the backpack that held all my worldly possessions. The corners of the diary were worn and curled from years of use. I casually flipped it open to a random page. It was densely covered with my grievances. I remember clearly who did what and when. I gritted my teeth, my voice icy cold. I started writing it back in elementary school. Back then, I thought to myself, when I grow up and have the ability, I will make all those who bullied me pay the price. Death leaned in, looking at the contents of my notebook. On October 24th, Li Yin ran through my book into the trash and slapped me. Li Yin ran, "I've got you in my memory. When I have the strength, I'll slap you to death, until your face is swollen like a pig's head." A crooked little figure was drawn next to it, labeled Li Yin ran. With a big cross marked on the figure's face, the pen tip was pressed so hard that it even pierced through the paper. On October 25th, teacher Zheng crossed out, "Damn Zheng Fugui made me and Li Yanran reconcile. I didn't want to, so he made me call my parents. That Zheng Fugui, I've got my eye on you. When I become successful in the future, I'll make you kneel for a whole day and embarrass you in front of all the teachers at school." Next to it, there was a drawing of a middle finger gesture. On October 26th, my uncle didn't go to school, called me a jinx, and didn't give me any food. Lin Jun, I've remembered you for 3 years. When I grow up, I will make you go hungry, so you know I am not a jinx, and make you clean all day just to get a bite of bread. In the end, I wrote too many characters, and they went beyond the lines, because of the intense hatred. Almost every page had dried tear stains and small pits poked with force. The god of death looked at the resentment in the notebook, then glanced at the notes he had sent me. Suddenly, I feel like I got a counterfeit version. The Grim Reaper was depressed for a while, then leaned over curiously and asked, "It's been 10 years, right? Can you still remember what they looked like?" I chuckled and took out my phone. I know their current social media accounts. Some have become internet celebrities, some have gone to university, and some have gone abroad with their parents' help. Looking at the glamorous photos on my phone, I couldn't help but grip it tighter. They were clearly bullies, yet they're adored by so many people online. Even the comment section is filled with comments like, "Sister is so gentle," and "Sister is so kind-hearted." Even if I post evidence of her bullying me, her fans will still make excuses to absolve her. Even if I file a report at the police station, at most I'll get a few insincere apologies. And I don't even have the time to file a lawsuit, because I need to earn money to buy food. The Grim Reaper watched me remain silent for a long time and waved his skeletal hand in front of my eyes. "Even if you have their social media accounts, some of them never show their faces." I looked up, smiling eerily, and said word by word, "Have you ever heard of doxing?" For Death fell silent, and after a long while, it slowly uttered, "What is unboxing?" I stopped laughing and looked at Death with some disdain. "What century are you from? So old-fashioned. You can just understand it as me being able to obtain all kinds of information about them online." The Grim Reaper watched me busily working on my phone and whispered, "That's illegal, isn't it? Aren't you worried about getting caught? Your world has police, right?" I shook my head and said sincerely, "I have great faith in the police's speed. Otherwise, why would I have prepared just one knife? I believe they will swiftly arrest me after I kill the agent." preventing me from killing a second person. As I spoke, I patted my chest and said indifferently, "But I'm already like this. Do you think I still care? But I'm actually quite grateful to you. I want to live again. Haha." People are very motivated when doing bad things. After resting my eyes for a bit and charging my phone to full, I forced myself to get up, ready to go do a day's work. Of the last 2 coins I had, I used one to buy a ballpoint pen. I used the other one to take the bus to the labor market. Once I got there, I followed the agent to the package sorting area. Besides me, there were over a dozen others who came to do part-time work, all brought here in the same vehicle. After the intermediary assigned us to our respective positions, they started watching us work. Standing next to me was a young girl. She greeted me in a friendly manner. "Hello. Are you here for a part-time job too?" I nodded, not wanting to waste energy on talking. Seeing me nod, the young girl immediately showed a somewhat shy smile. She was about to say something else when the agent suddenly shouted at us, "What are you all standing around for? Can't you see the packages piling up like a mountain? Do you think you can get 20 an hour for doing nothing?" The young girl was startled and quickly turned her head, not daring to speak anymore. Even though her hands never stopped moving, I glanced at the agent, thinking I'd quit as soon as I get my paycheck tomorrow. As usual, it was past 2 o'clock. The agent really started cursing. As time went by, his cursing became more and more vicious, and his words grew increasingly foul. Whenever he saw someone slow down even a little, he would start yelling at us part-timers, showering us with a torrent of abuse. "Damn it, are you blind? A bunch of useless idiots. Can't even handle such a simple task. You're dumber than pigs. And you still think you can make money like this, you lot? If you can do the work, then do it. If you don't want to, get the hell out. No one wants you here." I didn't even look up at the agent's words, skillfully tuning them out as usual. Death hovers beside me, tilting his head to watch the spittle-spewing agent. He ponders for a moment, then sighs in my ear. "This agent is a lot like the demons in our hell. You're like the wicked being whipped by demons." I was too tired to bother saying anything to the Grim Reaper, but the young girl beside me couldn't take it anymore. She was about to go argue with the agent, but I stopped her. "Don't go. He's doing it on purpose. If you get chased away by his insults, he can save on paying one person's wages. After all, you only get paid if you work until morning." The girl cursed and called it disgusting, then continued working, but because she went to take a sip of water, the agent took a photo and accused her of slacking off, saying they would deduct her pay. She couldn't take it anymore. She rushed over and argued with the agent, and in the end, she glared at the agent, her voice trembling with tears. "Who cares about your $200? I quit." Before leaving, I heard her mutter, "I should have never come in the first place. I might as well have asked my parents for some pocket money." The agent watched her leave and happily remarked, "The rest of you, leave if you dare. If you're staying, then work properly. You bunch of useless fools. Even dogs are more efficient than you." As soon as he said this, a few young people also left in anger. Death watched their retreating figures and drifted over to my side, asking, "Aren't you leaving?" I said as briefly as possible, "I don't have parents anymore." The Grim Reaper made a sound of acknowledgement and finally quieted down. 5. Finally, when it was over, the agent had taken a photo of me sitting on a stool at some point and said he was going to deduct money. In the end, I only got $140. I looked at the agent, took a deep breath, and calmly asked, "What's your name?" The agent thought I was being defiant and confidently said his name was Joe Gui. "Go ahead and sue if you dare." He was smug, knowing that no one would spend thousands on a lawsuit over such a small amount of money. After all, those who earn this hard-earned money usually don't have the time, energy, or means to pursue legal action. Moreover, our phones were confiscated from the start, so there's no evidence to sue even if we wanted to. I nodded, turned around, and left, taking out my notebook to write in it. Joe Gui was crushed to death by 200 gene of cow dung purchased by Mr. Zhang at 6:20 a.m. on August 7th. After writing, I stuffed the notebook back into my bag. Shortly after, screams came from behind. Looking back, Joe Gui was half buried in cow dung. Only his 2 hands could be seen flailing wildly outside. The sorters nearby were so frightened that they quickly backed away. He was completely pinned underneath, with cow dung blocking his mouth and nose, making it impossible for him to even cry for help properly. I watched for a while, then turned and walked out of the warehouse. The morning sun had just risen, and it was a bit dazzling. I spent $5 to buy 4 steamed buns and a bottle of water from the breakfast stall at the entrance. While eating the buns, I walked towards the address I had written down in my notebook yesterday. I walked to a crossroads and sat down on a small stone bench by the roadside. I took out my phone and checked the time. There were still 10 minutes to go. 10 minutes later, The agency that handles my salary appeared across the intersection. Death watched as the agent was flattened into a pancake by a large truck. He leaned in, placing his skeletal hand on my shoulder, and said deliberately, "Ah, you are truly heartless, making a child witness his father's tragic death with his own eyes. He'll probably have nightmares from now on." I turned my head and said earnestly to the Grim Reaper, "Ah, you're so soft-hearted. You're the god of death, not an angel. Do you know the old saying in China, when you cut the grass, you must pull out the roots? He won't have the chance to have nightmares anymore." The god of death let out a sound of surprise. Only after seeing that all 3 people across from me were gone did I slip my phone back into my pocket and head toward the next address. Death followed silently behind me. In just one morning, he had witnessed at least 40 different ways to die. By noon, I was tired, getting ready to go back to sleep. Death couldn't help but complain. "You're quite ruthless," I calmly replied. "They only lost a life, but I lost my wages. Before, they didn't pay me my wages, and now I don't want the money anymore. Consider it as payment for their lives." Holding his scythe, Death asked in disbelief, "Did they all owe you wages?" I nodded and said with a cold laugh, "Labor agencies across the country, very few of them have any conscience. It's just a matter of how much they take. The first agency I worked with wasn't even willing to give me a single cent. They took it all for themselves." 6. Amid the sigh of the Grim Reaper, I returned to the house where I had stayed yesterday. After glancing around, I carefully took out a wire and began to pick the lock. Right now, the landlord is in a lawsuit with the deceased's family, who are demanding hundreds of thousands in compensation. Compared to hundreds of thousands, he simply has no time to bother with this house. I should be able to stay for a few more days. The room still looks the same as yesterday, with the old mattress laid on the cement floor. In the corner, there are pots, pans, and dishes left behind by the deceased. There are no windows in the room, so it remains dim even during the day. I threw my backpack onto the mattress and lay down without even taking off my shoes. Every bone in my body felt as if it had been taken apart and haphazardly put back together, especially my wrists, which still ached faintly. As soon as I closed my eyes, overwhelming drowsiness washed over me, and I fell asleep in no time. When I woke up again, it was already nighttime. I patted my stomach, got up, took out the bread from my backpack, and swallowed it with half a bottle of cold water. I pulled out my phone just in time to watch Li Yinran's live stream. Li Yinran, with delicate light makeup on her face, was holding a donation certificate and smiling at the camera. "Thanks to all the baby support, I've donated part of last month's livestream earnings to the Stray Animal Rescue Center. Although it's not much, I hope it can help the little ones. Also, thank you all for always supporting me, which has enabled me to do these good deeds." The screen was instantly flooded with comments like "Ranran is so kind" and "I followed the right person," while some sent small gifts, praising her for being beautiful inside and out. The Grim Reaper floated beside me, tilting its skull. "It seems your classmate has turned into a good person." He paused, as if observing my reaction, then added, "If you kill her now, wouldn't you be just like those who bullied you? Would you like to take the legal route? And you've all grown up now. What happened in the past is all behind us. They did hurt you, but you're still alive. Nothing happened in the end. And yet you still wanted to kill her. When you think about this in the future, won't you feel guilty? Won't you worry about the consequences?" I looked up at him, sneered, and uttered 4 words, "You're sick, psycho." After saying that, I ignored the Grim Reaper, took out my notebook, and started writing in it. Li Yinran, due to experiencing nightmares for 3 consecutive days, was hitting herself during a live stream while apologizing for things she had done before. Finally, on August 10th, she was fatally attacked by an enraged fan who threw sulfuric acid on her. 7. The Grim Reaper watched my swift movements, the soul fire in his skeletal eye sockets flickering. As if contemplating something, I turned off the live stream and continued to refer to my notes and the information on my phone, diligently writing with great effort. After writing for a while, I looked at the remaining 130 yuan. After some thought, taking the bus to the train station would cost 1 yuan, the train ticket is 60, the bus ticket is 10, and I need to set aside 20 for 2 days worth of food. That should basically be enough. I picked up my phone and booked a train ticket back to my hometown. Death saw my actions and came over to ask me what I wanted to do. I coldly replied, "Slaughter the village." When I returned to the village after a 4-hour train ride and a 3-hour bus ride, it just so happened to be during a feast. The whole village gathered together to send off the uncle who had fallen into the manure pit on his final journey. As soon as I walked over, I was stopped by the uncle's son. He looked at me, his eyebrows furrowed, with an expression that seemed extremely unwelcoming. "What are you back for? At my dad's funeral? You didn't give any condolence money." And now you're coming empty-handed to freeload." The people chatting around all stopped and turned their eyes to me in unison. I looked up at him and said calmly, "I don't have any money, and you should be giving me money instead. It's about time you returned the money my parents left behind." The uncle's son snorted coldly and shamelessly said, "What are you talking about? There's no such money. Even if there was, it was used to raise you. Our family raised you all these years. And instead of being grateful, you actually want money back," I said while taking the opportunity to carefully observe the faces of the villagers. "All right, but what about the money, and the house, the land, the house, the land?" The eldest uncle's son seemed to have heard the biggest joke. "That house was renovated by my dad later. It's no longer considered your parents'. The land was also redistributed by the village." "What does it have to do with you?" As soon as he finished speaking, a relative nearby chimed in to back him up. "That's right, Shaolin, what does a girl like you need a house and land for? Your uncle raised you, you should be grateful." I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that. He raised me, and you all clearly saw how he treated me. Sometimes I couldn't even get one meal a day, yet I still had to do their laundry and cook for them. "How dare you say that?" The people around instantly fell silent. The eldest uncle's son's face flushed bright red, and he reached out to grab my arm. "Stop talking nonsense here. Get out right now, you unwanted thing." I took a step back, avoiding his hand. Several uncles came over to mediate. "Shaolin, you shouldn't say things like that. Talk it over properly with your brother. We're all family. Let's not make things so ugly." The village chief also came over, patted me on the shoulder, and said in a gentle tone, "Shaolin, let's not bring up the past anymore. Your uncle is no longer here, so you'll have to bear more responsibility. As for the land, it belongs to the collective. It can't be left to a girl like you." Seeing that no one around was speaking up for me, I smiled. "Fine, I'll leave." I scanned the crowd, firmly imprinting their faces in my memory. I turned and headed straight for the ancestral hall. 8. As I compared the names with the clan genealogy, I began to worry. How could I eliminate them all at once? Death leaned in, looked at the clan genealogy, and sighed. "This is really a great tool, making it convenient to execute the 9 familial exterminations, but why are they all male? Does this thing have gender discrimination? No wonder a friend of mine reincarnated as a baby girl in your world, only to come back the very next second." I remained silent, then asked with some hesitation, "If I write about Lin Guangzong getting drunk and fighting with his wife, killing her, and then bleeding to death himself, can that be achieved?" Death tilted his head and asked in disbelief, "You're not even sparing his wife?" I calmly replied, "Birds of a feather flock together, and I don't discriminate. Men die, women die, the elderly die, and children can die too. Does death distinguish between men and women, old and young?" Death was taken aback for a moment, then shook his head to indicate, "No, you can't directly manipulate someone to kill others." "Then can we push the boundaries a bit? For example, Lin Guangzong insists on taking cephalosporin with alcohol and even wants his whole family to join him, or the old lady, afraid of wasting food, cooks rice that's been contaminated with paraquat for her family to eat. Does that count?" Death fell silent and helplessly said, "You are too evil. You will go to hell after you die. They are all your relatives. Are you really not going to reconsider?" Seeing Death's reaction, I nodded. It seemed feasible. Since it's feasible, I directly took out a pen and started writing. Lin Yazu, on August 10th, wanted to make money by staging a scam, took his whole family to carry it out, and ended up being beaten to death by a crowd. Lin Guangzong, on August 10th, forced his whole family to save money by eating moldy leftovers, and ultimately passed away despite rescue efforts. Lin Shan, on August 10th, replaced his son's allergy medication with vitamins, and was hit by a car and killed on the way to the hospital. I've been writing from noon until evening. After finishing the last name's manner of death, I stuffed the notebook into my backpack. I stood up, ready to find a place to stay. 9. I went to the house that originally belonged to my family. My uncle died, and the others in his house probably died this afternoon too. No one had time to care about me. I pried open the door lock and walked right in. The layout inside the house had been almost completely changed. A thick layer of dust has accumulated on the table. Death curiously looked around. "So this is your home?" "I have no home anymore. Didn't you just hear? This house doesn't belong to me." I was silent for a moment, then said with a smile, "Since my parents didn't leave a will when they died, legally, this house needs to be divided equally with my grandparents." My grandparents then gave it to my uncle. Just as Death was about to say something, I let out a loud cry. "Oh no! I forgot to include my mother's relatives. It's all their fault. After they took the money and left, they never came to see me even once. I almost forgot they existed." I felt a bit annoyed. Since it was already evening, I could only wait until tomorrow to go. The next day, by the time I got up, It was already noon. After finishing the meal, I walked out of the house. The village was empty and extremely quiet. From time to time, a few corpses could be seen by the roadside. The village chief died at the entrance of the village. Looking at his body, I couldn't help but smile and sigh. Death is truly fair. I borrowed the village chief's tricycle. The Grim Reaper said I stole it, but I told him I asked, and he didn't refuse. I rode the tricycle while the Grim Reaper obediently sat on it, still urging me to be kind. I've come to realize, he probably thinks persuading me to kill lacks challenge, so now he's trying to persuade me not to kill. 3 hours later, I arrived at my grandparents' house. Of course, they didn't welcome me. After all, in their eyes, I am just another Jody born by Jody, but it doesn't matter. Looking at the photos of my grandparents, I know they all have to die today, thanks to Douyin. My uncle has posted quite a few videos on it. The elderly folks at the village entrance were more than happy to share information with me. This is such a convenient software indeed. Technology benefits humanity. 10. The uncle died. The teacher died. The bullies died. Everyone died. I excitedly drove the tricycle, humming a tune. Not a single cloud in the sky, the wind blowing very comfortably. Arrived at my parents' gravesite. A thin layer of dust had settled on the tombstone, and I had just crouched down to wipe it off. A young man dressed like a Taoist priest pointed a small wooden sword at me. He shouted loudly, "You demon, what kind of trick have you used?" I just went to check the village, and it was full of corpses, all with the appearance of violent deaths. I turned around and asked with a smile, "Do you know who I am?" The Taoist was taken aback for a moment, then confidently replied, "I don't. What's your background?" He looked at me warily. I tilted my head and calmly said, "Before asking someone's name, shouldn't you introduce yourself first?" The Taoist snorted and proudly declared, "I am Li Qing, the head priest of the Qingshu temple." Li Qing, the Qing is in clear water. Seeing him nod, I laughed. "Are you human?" Naturally, he puffed out his chest, looking quite proud. I let out an "oh" and quickly wrote on a piece of paper I had already torn off. The Taoist priest looked at me with some confusion, and I blinked and smiled, saying, "Taoist priest, if I call your name, would you dare to answer?" He was about to say something when he clutched his chest and collapsed straight down. I knelt back in front of my parents' tombstone, slowly wiping the dust off the stone. Death stood by, mocking my cold-heartedness. I remained silent, when suddenly a chill ran down my spine. 2 figures in long robes stood not far away. The black-clad ghost held a chain dragging on the ground, while the white-clad ghost's long tongue hung down to his chest. Their eyes were fixed intently on us. "You Grim Reaper, causing trouble again. Do you know how much extra work you've created for us?" Death said indifferently, "It's fun. How many people die every day in the world? Why do you care so much?" After saying that, Death looked at me and asked if I wanted to go with him. The black and white impermanence grew anxious. No, she should come back with us to be punished. I slowly stood up, ignoring the 2 impermanents, and instead looked at Death. "Do you want to take me away?" The Grim Reaper paused, his voice a bit lower than usual. "Isn't it good? At least you won't have to suffer if you come with me." "No need." I smiled and turned to look at He Wucheng and Bai Wucheng. "Are the people I killed still with you now?" He Wucheng was taken aback, probably not expecting me to ask this. After a moment's pause, he said, "Yes, what do you want to do?" I laughed. "All right, I'll go with you. I'm looking forward to it." After saying that, I swiftly killed myself. 11. The black and white impermanence remained silent for a long time before finally wrapping the chains around my wrists. I glanced back at the Grim Reaper, who seemed very unwilling. As I passed through the black mist, my ears were filled with the howls of ghosts and wolves. Soon after, I heard a familiar scream. It was my uncle's voice. I was overjoyed. When my uncles saw me, they struggled to rush over and hit me, shouting that I had harmed them. Just as I was about to take action, 2 figures appeared before me, blocking my way. Looking at the familiar silhouettes, I felt a bit dazed for a moment. Dad, Mom, and Dad are still wearing the clothes they died in, exactly as I remember them. Father threw himself onto Uncle, angrily shouting at him for not taking good care of me. Mother held me tightly in her arms, telling me not to be afraid. The ghost officer nearby muttered, "The resentment on her is stronger than that of 10 overworked employees who dropped dead from exhaustion. You should worry about yourselves." While complaining, it dragged those ghosts away. Father drifted over and looked at me with heartache. Even though I'm already a ghost, for some reason my eyes feel a bit sore. Looking at my parents' concerned eyes, my voice was full of grievance. "Dad, Mom, when you're not around, they all bully me. This world has been so unkind to me. I miss you so much." Later, my father and mother chose not to be reincarnated and decided to stay with me. Death also comes to see me from time to time, bringing me some foreign goods. As for that Taoist priest, I asked the underworld guards to strike him with lightning. He came back to life again. I'm quite happy, even though I roll on the mountain of knives every day. It hurts, but I've gotten used to it. Moreover, if I hadn't met the Grim Reaper, The underworld official told me I would have stabbed the agent to death, I would have spent over a decade in prison, and after getting out, I wouldn't be able to find a decent job, only able to do manual labor and odd jobs, then I would get sick and die in agony. After death, one still has to go to hell. Now it's better, since I've made enough mistakes, I can go to other levels to be punished, and by the way, take care of the people I wrote to death. Let them truly experience what it means that evil will be repaid with evil.